Hello and welcome to We Random, episode 65. We are recording Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. We're going to talk about some random stuff. We're going to talk about some fun stuff. We're going to laugh and maybe swear every now and then because B has a potty mouth. But before we get into that, B, why did the Onion get so flustered?
Probably because it needed to be unpacked.
Because it saw the salad dressing. Oh! We'll be right back after this.
Almost Qualified Productions.
Let's get crazy!
Experts don't have this much fun.
Welcome to We Random, episode 65. I'm Landmark. Out there is Sconzi. How you doing tonight, Sconzi? Say hello to all of these wonderful people.
Hey, everybody. I'm doing good. How you doing tonight, B?
I'm here. You know, I'm doing what I can. It's been a long day. As you said, it's like the most Monday of Tuesdays in the world, but
For sure.
you know, I am doing what I can, and we're gonna try to get mad online. So we've got a wonderful Wheel of Doom that is going to allow us to have multiple chances to get angry online about lots of different things, and if we're lucky enough, there might just be some swear words. But before we get there, other than Mr. Rhythm, do you have any words of wisdom or artifacts of hope for our people?
No, I got nothing.
All right. Well, I guess we should move on to the true point of this podcast, where
Yes.
we're going to spin that Wheel of Doom and we're going to talk about a topic.
Something probably horrible. You know, Wiggs, I was going to go with that quote too. By the way, Z-Dubs did just let us know that we shouldn't swear too much or Nick will get a hold of us and get mad. All right, we're going to talk, though, about something that everybody can agree on as being a great thing. The horrible Chicago Bears. Sorry, Jeff, if you're listening out there. We're going to talk about the Bears.
So I saw this article, and at first I was like, this is interesting. So since George McCaskey took over as the chairman of the Bears in 2011, the three most important people in the franchise, the general manager, the head coach, and the quarterback, have seldom aligned. Bad decisions compounded on bad decisions. Nobody gets a clean slate. Nobody gets to build their own program, said former Bear Patrick Mannelly, the longest tenured player in Bears franchise history, a long snapper, by the way. It feels like everybody has kind of had one handcuff on whenever they got hired. It's a circle of inheriting the previous regime's trash. So what happened is there is an article through The Athletic where they talked to more than a dozen sources close to the team about the moments over the past decade when the organization didn't seem to know what it wanted to be or where it was going. And most of these awful, terrible, no good moments come down to mismanagement by upper management. So I thought that this was interesting, considering that the budget magician Matt Nagy just got fired, because of course he did.
Wah,
And you know, like this, as I read this article, the first thing that I thought about was it makes me really glad that the Packers don't have like a true, right? Because we see this throughout all of sports, whether it's football or baseball or basketball or even like indoor soccer, where like the owner dictates so much of the team culture and like who's on the team, who's not on the team, how the team is doing, what's going on. And it's like, in some cases it could be good, but in most cases it's bad.
Yeah, it's just one more cook in the kitchen, right? Like that's the thing. Yeah, you know, I first of all, as a Packers fan who is very much not a Bears fan, of course I enjoy the Bears being horrible. Let's be honest. It's, you know, a free couple wins every year. But I think that the way that I would look at this is it really speaks in a lot of ways to the benefits of having a very good quarterback, right? Because not only is this a quarterback league, but it also buys you some time, right? It buys you a little bit of time because that person can at least make you manageable, make you, a 500 team or something that's going to maybe give you a little bit of longevity. so that somebody can start to put their spin on things. Because the fact of the matter is, everybody that comes into one of those high roles, they want it to be their team, right? They want to put their stamp on things. And they're being brought in, and this article is pretty interesting because they talked about, I don't remember the specifics, but this person is hired, but you have to run that old person's defense. And there's one part where they're talking about the fact that, was it Lance Briggs? I don't know if I got that name right. There was someone was brought in. They were told that they had to run the previous regime's defense. None of the coaches knew how to coach this defense. So literally a player was staying after practice to work with the younger players to teach them how to do the defense because the coaches didn't know how. Like, you are never, ever going to succeed doing that. It's just asinine. And these are the things that bad franchises do. They just do stupid things. And, I can't say I want the Bears to be successful, but it sucks as I know people who are Bears fans, and God, it's horrible to just see them continue to spin this way. Like, you just need to make a clean break, start fresh, know that you're going to suck for a couple of years, but just try to get things moving in that right direction. And the more that they kind of hold on to something without moving forward, the more they just keep shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, and you see this around the league, right? Like Chicago, Minnesota, the New York Giants. Like, there are these franchises that just have these owners who, like, they keep just running people through, and it's like, it's not working. Like, you have talented players, but whatever you're doing isn't working. And like, that's one of the things that I'm thankful for, that, like, yes, obviously, like you said, the Packers have been lucky to have the consistency that they've had at quarterback, but you even look at like Atlanta, like, people were high on Matt Ryan forever, and like, they still kind of sucked for a long time.
Yeah, they've had some good, but a lot of not
same
good.
thing with so look at the Lions with Matthew Stafford, right?
Yeah.
Like, they had Matthew Stafford, Calvin Johnson, Barry Sanders. Two of those three people retired early because the organization was so inept.
And they're both Hall of Famers. They're both Hall of Famers.
Right? Like, if you have two Hall of Famers who retire because your organization is so inept, that is a problem.
Yeah, that's a serious problem. And like, the Lions is a good example of how my theory isn't 100% true. But yeah, it's just I was another article that I stumbled onto, and it's not part of what we've got here, but there's an article I was reading about the Minnesota Vikings and how they are looking for a new GM, and they're actually interviewing a woman for the job, which is pretty exciting. First woman to ever interview for that type of a role. And then there's a lot of conversation of the fact that they might try to dump Kirk Cousins. And, they're talking about her connection because she worked with the Eagles, and the Eagles are probably looking to move on from, the second worst quarterback in the NFL next to Justin Fields. And again, it's the same kind of thing, right? Like, whoever it is, whether it's her or somebody else, whoever it is inheriting this albatross that is Kirk Cousins, he's not horrible. Like, he's not one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league, maybe on the bottom half of the top 10, but he's making a crap ton of money, and they probably don't want that guy going forward. So what do? Do you just deal with it, or do you try to get rid of him and kind of start fresh? Like, hey, guess what? Next year we might not be great, although maybe they can get a better quarterback. There's a lot of quarterbacks that are going to be available. But maybe you just have to cut ties, move on, and build it back up. And I don't know. The Bears just are not doing that. And I think as long as they continue to be, handcuffed to the previous regime, they're never going to get there.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate part about sports. It's like, so many organizations are like this, where it's like people are just tied to the previous regime's just utter garbage. So we'll see. But I just put this on here because, like I said, it made me feel thankful that we don't have an owner who meddles in things, and then you end up with a goalkeeper who can't stay in his fucking goal. Okay.
Yeah, the fact that we don't have that extra cook in the kitchen is a big thing. I mean, there kind of are to some. Like, you could say Mark Murphy kind of plays that role to some degree, but he's also not the guy holding the purse strings, right? Because whenever you have that person holding the purse strings, all of a sudden their opinion holds a whole lot more weight, and that's just one more person to muck stuff up.
I'm just giggling to myself over here because I totally just dropped that little Easter egg in for like one person who listens to this podcast who is totally going to like cackle when she hears that. Anyway, we're going to move on to the next topic.
Before I spin, Emily had a question, so let's dive into this. I have a stupid question. What does a general manager do for a team? I understand the owner, the QB, and the coach. No need to address on the podcast. Well, I'm going to address it anyway, Emily, because I didn't get to that last part.
We can address that real quick. That'll be easy.
Basically, the general manager is, in the words of, oh my God, what's his name? That coach from the Giants 20, 30, 40 years ago. Bill Parcells.
Bill Parcells.
The general manager is who shops for the groceries, basically. They're the ones who do, they kind of lead the scout team. They generally lead the draft and pick the players and sign free agents, that type of stuff. So they're the ones that kind of build the team up. Now, there should be some kind of conversations happening with the coaches and all of that. But in the end, the general manager is the one that's making those decisions.
Yeah, and that's kind of, that role is transitioning somewhat in the league, where previously it was like whatever the general manager said goes, but now there are coaches who come in and they have say over final player personnel decisions versus the general manager having those decisions. And then some GMs like Jerry Jones, or not GMs, but some owners like Jerry Jones, that he's like, I have final decision making.
Right. You get on multiple levels of that. But yeah, anyway, the Bill Parcells quote, he was a Hall of Fame coach. I think he's a Hall of Fame coach. Or a Super Bowl winning coach at least. And he had made the comment when he wanted control as kind of the GM is, hey, if I need to cook dinner, I need to be able to buy the groceries, something along those lines. Yeah. All right, we're spinning the wheel. We're going to get something exciting here. That was actually a pretty positive topic. I mean, as positive as the Bears can be. But now we're going to talk about tennis and this name that I'm not even going to try to butcher.
Oh, you don't want to talk about Novak Djokovic?
Yeah, that guy. That's exactly what I was going to say, too. I would have been 100% correct.
Novak Yokovic has left Australia after judges upheld the Australian government's cancellation of his visa and his deportation. The court ruling capped a 2-week drama over Novak's decision to not be vaccinated against coronavirus. 3 judges upheld the visa cancellation on public interest grounds, meaning that Novak cannot defend his Australian Open title, a tournament which he has won 9 times. 9 times. So the backstory to this is that the Australian government has taken very strong stances on COVID, and a lot of their policies and procedures are very strict, even more strict than America, when it comes to what those individuals who are vaccinated or not vaccinated can or cannot do. So one of their things is like, basically, if you are not vaccinated, you cannot come here. So please go away. So, and I don't know that that's 100% the reality of the situation. Like, I tried looking on their like transportation website, and they have like 9 pages, like, here's what you need to do, and here's what you need to apply for, and here's what it means, and here's what you need to provide us. And here, so like, I wasn't doing all that. But basically, because he is not vaccinated, they canceled his visa and said, nope, you are a risk to our public safety, so we are not allowing you to be here.
Yeah, it's, I know that Australia is super strict. I kind of followed along with a woman who's a streamer who works in America. She's an Australian resident, so this is somebody, or an Australian citizen. She's living in the U.S. on a visa because she works here, and she flew home to see her family. And when she got there, they stuck her in a hotel for quarantine for like 2 or 2.5 weeks. She had to stay in this hotel. She's vaccinated. She's completely vaccinated. She's a citizen of the country. She still had to wait in this hotel for like 2.5 weeks. And I'm sure was losing her mind in the process. So I know that they are super, super serious about it. Like, people have different opinions. Are they being too serious? Are they taking it too seriously? But I mean, we're also living in a country where, half the population thinks it's nothing but a cold and they run around spitting on people or whatever. So we have definitely a different approach to things. I don't know. A part of me says the guy's a tennis player. He's going to go out into the court and he's not going to be within 50 feet of anybody. Does it really matter? Another part of me says, well, he's still going to be around people in the locker rooms or walking the halls or the media or whatever. Another part of me says, why are we going to make an exception for this person because he happens to be famous and he's playing tennis? Like, there's a lot of back and forth, and nobody's ever, like, everybody is not going to agree on the approach. I don't know that I care one way or another. I have no, stake in this game, but I think it's interesting. It's interesting that somebody like that didn't get a pass.
Right. Well, I thought that's interesting just from a financial perspective, because again, like if you look at America, people bend over backwards to make $1 here, right?
Yeah.
Like over there, this 9-time champion, they're saying, no, we're not going to allow you to compete in your sport because you are breaking one of our rules, right? And whether
Right.
you agree with the rule or don't agree with the rule, I think that that's interesting that they put their like political and national policy above making $1 on this tennis tournament.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing that I saw that was interesting, and I'm going to butcher it because I don't have the tweet in front of me, but there was somebody that was like, look, tennis tournaments because we have a society, and in a society we have rules and regulations that are used to keep each other safe. Novak has made decisions that go against being collegial and keeping people safe, so therefore too bad. I was like, that's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, I to Wiggum's point, Wiggum says, I love that he doesn't get treated differently from anyone else. I think it's fair. If I went to Australia and I wasn't vaccinated, I would expect that they would treat me the same way. So I think that's fair. All right, I did just take a video of Max Headroom over here.
Nice.
With Brian's permission. I'll post that on the Discord server. I might need to get a better one. Oh, now it's super amazing. I gotta keep an eye on it. I'll get a better one. That one wasn't as great. All right, the wheel has spun, and we are going to talk about Brian's favorite place to go shopping, the Dollar Tree.
Dollar Tree. I don't even know the last time I've been at the Dollar Tree, but Dollar Tree's recent decision to end $1 prices after 35 years and raise most items in stores to $1.25 has elicited an angry response from many loyal customers online. The criticism highlights the risks that Dollar Tree, the last of the big dollar store chains to actually sell nearly everything for $1, took when it abandoned its $1 brand identity. So one of the interesting parts about this is that there are signs that the move may be alienating some shoppers. An online survey of around 500 consumers by CoreSite Research found a 6.2% drop in the number of customers who said that they had bought non-food items at Dollar Tree compared to the prior 2 weeks. A steeper decline of 12.2% was recorded among shoppers ages 45 to 60. Other chains such as Walmart and Dollar General did not see similar drops in their surveys. So, for context here, Dollar Tree added the $1.25 prices to more than 2,000 stores in December, and it has a total of around 8,700 in U.S. stores. So the thing here is that Dollar Tree says, hey, we've had a very positive response from the majority of our customers, and they're kind of playing this out, saying that, this caused us to not be able to carry products that people wanted if we kept things at $1, and labor and transportation and fuel and merchandise and shipping costs have all been surging, which is squeezing our profits, and that's why we got to go to $1.25, despite the fact that as recently as August, the Dollar Tree chief executive said the company was committed to $1. So are we is this our I don't know which drop to use on this one. Is this the ZE? Is this
Can I just do this one since I just added it to the podcast sounds?
Ooh, is this new one?
I mean, it's not new. I just didn't have it with these sounds.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that one. I need to have like a list of all of our sounds so I can just cue you to be like, play this one.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I feel like this is a Zeke Elliott feed me of the week, probably. But
Maybe. We'll see.
do we want to sit on it? Do we want to save it?
Yeah,
Save the
there's
ZE?
one I have in mind.
Okay.
Cool. I mean, so my initial thought is it's a fucking quarter, man. Like it's a quarter. It's just, we're talking about a quarter, man. it's a quarter. All right, we're talking about a quarter. Trying to do my practice thing. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I think probably part like the one stat that they showed that it had a 6% drop. It was a week, right? Like a week isn't much. I mean, I wouldn't freak out too much about that. It also was the week after Christmas. Like, who's out shopping the Dollar Tree the week after Christmas? So that probably has more to do with it than the $1.25. But
I mean, it's interesting though, right? Like, I feel like if we're looking at Dollar Tree, the individuals who generally shop there are probably more cash strapped than those individuals who are not shopping there. So that's why I thought this was interesting, because that, like, if we're talking about percentage of hikes, that's a pretty bold percentage, even if it is just like a quarter, right?
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. I don't know. I get the feeling that, like, they did mention in this article at one point, there's certain customer favorites that they had to stop selling or something. So, okay, I kind of get that. I don't know. My pessimistic point of view on this is that Dollar Tree is seeing all these other companies making record profits because they can write it off as inflation or, you know, supply chain limitations, which is all a bunch of bunk to begin with. And they're like, we want to get ours. That's what I would write this off to be personally.
That's fair. I mean, and again, this kind of falls into the narrative of stuff we've talked about week after week after week. Is I'm going to get mine, so
yeah,
doesn't matter what happens to you. Also, the CDC says get your ass back to work.
So
that's also what this is. You know,
I think Wiggum brings a good point. I had the same thought too. Is this is a company that has never really raised their price. Like, at one point they started to add certain things that were marked up a little bit.
Yeah.
But otherwise, they really haven't raised their price. So that's fair.
Yeah.
All right, we're spinning. Oh, I thought I was going to play Zeke, but instead, this is a good story. We're going to talk about baseball and gender diversity in said baseball.
All right. So, baseball, while currently locking out its players because billionaires are telling millionaires how poor they are, has arrived at a landmark moment this week when the New York Yankees introduced Rachel Belkovic as the manager of the Tampa Bay Tarpoons, not how I initially read it, their low-A affiliate. Yokovic, who at one point in her career started listing her first name in job applications as Ray because she'd stopped receiving callbacks despite an impressive credential and resume, became the first woman ever appointed as manager of a minor league team. As well, the Red Sox have now hired Katie Krall as a minor league coach, making the Red Sox the first organization with 2 women on a coaching staff. In 2022, there will be 11 women coaching in affiliated baseball, 8 that have been hired since the start of 2021. So I thought this was interesting because we've talked a little bit about, you know, trying to find different diversity in sports, whether that's gender diversity or racial diversity or different types of things, right? So I think it's kind of an interesting trend that baseball, even if at the lower levels, is hiring more women into the sport.
You know, B, I swear we do this same story every other fucking week. And it's pretty fucking awesome. I gotta say. Like, NBA is doing stuff, kind of. I mean, they shafted Becky Harmon, but, you know, Major League Baseball is doing stuff. We just talked about a woman interviewing for a general manager role in the NFL. Like, there was a story we didn't get to last week about, I think it was referees in a soccer league or something. So it's like,
there was a pro woman in the men's Australian baseball league.
Yeah, so we're starting to see more and more of these stories, and I think it's fantastic. We need more of this. I mean, the fact that this article talks about the fact that she changed her name, how she displayed her name to try to get more callbacks, and I mean, it's disgusting that people are doing that, but it happens. It's part of the world today, unfortunately. But the fact that we see these individuals breaking through, I think, is amazing. It's definitely a good story.
Definitely. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see how that transcends as teams do well or don't do well, right?
Yep.
Because hopefully these individuals can kind of move up through the ranks and maybe get to, AA clubs and AAA clubs and even to the major leagues at some point. I know the first woman who was on the Red Sox staff, she's made it. She said, "I want to be a manager, so that's my goal."
Good.
That's
Good
pretty
for
cool.
her. Yeah. All right. Let's talk about Democrat followers. What are Democrat followers? This was one that B sent to me. I think it was yesterday, and just said, "Hey, I'd like to hear what you have to say about this." And I said,
True.
"Let's put it on the podcast."
Yep. So I will defer to you after I read about it. So Democratic strategist Paul Bergala speculated recently that the reason the party has come up short in passing voting rights is because it has, quote, bad followers. Now, the context to this is that Bergala was reacting to a comment from Andrea Waters King, who is the wife of Martin Luther King Jr.'s son. So obviously, lots of connecting the dots. But basically, what the King family has recently said is that they'd like to see Joe Biden and Democrats put the same power and passion behind voting rights that was put behind the infrastructure bills that were able to be passed. So the response, when asked for a response, Bergala said, "Those of us who want to save voting rights, we need to get to work. I think Biden is putting everything behind this, but he needs better followers. He needs all of us to get in the game as well." So in saying this, Bergala referenced how MLK advocated for mobilizing people in churches, universities, labor unions, and other organizations when trying to get Lyndon Johnson to pass a voting rights bill in the 1960s after the passing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So, before I go and give my pessimistic view here, I am going to let you roll with this, and then depending on what you say, I may or may not keep my pessimistic comments to myself.
I just want to say that I used to be kind of a fan of Paul Begala, but mainly because he was on this show called Crossfire, I think it was. And he always sat across from Tucker Carlson, who, is a dick. Anyway, I think the important thing to think about is Joe Biden, and this might be a shock to some people, so I want you to, hold on to your chairs, get ready. He's the fucking president, man. He's the fucking president. And let's be honest, when this whole infrastructure thing happened, that's all that I read about. Is fucking Biden is pushing here and pushing there, talking to this person. He's having secret meetings. He's, fucking meeting with Manchin every other day. And he's doing all this stuff to push it through. There was no fucking march in the streets of New York City for the goddamn infrastructure plan. No one, is it good stuff? Sure. But there's no huge national push behind it. So why the hell would you compare that with voting rights, which frankly is a whole hell of a lot more important? This is just a stupid cop-out as far as I'm concerned. Joe Biden isn't pushing the same way that he was for that bill. So let's start there. Now, I do think that the reference that he has, I don't know if it's accurate. I don't know if I like it. It kind of irritates me a little bit. But yes, if there was a huge social uprising, whether they're Democrats or whomever, if there was that huge social uprising like what we saw in the civil rights era, then sure, that might make things easier, right? It might empower him to speak more, but he's still the fucking president.
Well, and are you done, or I didn't want to cut you off?
No, go, do your thing.
So I thought that this was interesting, right? Because the comment that he made about the civil rights era, one of the things that he was quoting somebody who talked to Lyndon Johnson or something, and Johnson had told MLK, I used all of my political power to get this thing passed, so now I don't have the political power. And I think that's what he's trying to say about Biden. But look, one of the things that's kind of funny in this statement, advocated for mobilizing people in churches, universities, labor unions, other organizations. Now, if we think about those organizations today, churches generally aligned with the right, labor unions destroyed by the right, universities destroyed by the right, this is not intentional, right? Like, there have been very specific things to tear these institutions down, to tear their power down so people aren't able to rise up, right? Like, the thing that I notice about this, and I think you are correct, that, could Joe Biden be doing more? Yes. Is he not doing more in a strategic manner? Probably. But this just frustrated me. Like, as I read it, it really frustrated me because there are strategic things that have been done to cut the power out of these organizations over the years.
Well, yeah. And I mean, even if you just want to take it to its most basic level, like, this is his own political future that he needs to fight for, right? Because a lot of the people who are having their rights stripped from them, they're people that most likely would vote for him. And I like Gamer's comment that Lyndon Johnson still had the political power to wage a highly unpopular war in Vietnam. That's a point.
Well,
and I think that's the thing. That's the thing, though, right? Is they'll choose what they want to fight for and what they don't. And I think that the fact that he isn't fighting that hard for this, at least nowhere near what we saw with the infrastructure bill, I think that speaks volumes, personally.
Yep. So this whole thing is just incredibly frustrating. And like you said, would it be great to have an uprising and to have and there was like some weird comment that was like a 10-second clip that I saw on Twitter that I was like, I need more context here because Joe Biden is kind of going off on a weird Joe Biden-y tangent where he said something like the murder of George Floyd had a bigger impact than MLK's assassination. And I'm like, I really need to see the context of this comment because just like the comment on its own really like seems a little strange to me.
Yeah, I have no context on that either. And Wiggs, you bring up a good point. At 107 years old, he may not have much of a political future anyway. I'm spinning the wheel. He needs to start going to church. That way you can, he needs to put in brownie points so it goes to the right place.
Zeke Elliott, feed me of the week.
Uh-oh.
Speaking of feeding, let's talk about King Scoopers. I don't think the C is supposed to be there, but we're gonna call it King Scoopers.
Scoopers. All right. Well, more than 8,000 workers of Kroger's Colorado-based King Supers, apparently it's Supers, not
It is
Scoopers.
Supers, yeah.
Went on strike. The union representing these workers, the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, says that King Supers workers are underpaid, overworked, and inadequately protected. So this is a quote from the union president. The companies were thriving, but our workers didn't thrive. Do you know what our workers got? COVID, attacked, beat up, spit on, slapped, and overworked. What about the company? They did great. They did absolutely great, sitting behind their desk doing their job by Zoom. Does that sound familiar, anybody? Anyway, so with COVID has increased Kroger's bottom line. In 2020, Kroger recorded $4.1 billion in profits, an increase of $1.1 billion from 2019. Due to sustained food-at-home trends, Kroger is now projecting its profits for 2021 will be even higher. So, in contrast, Kroger has said that they offered workers a fair deal, which raised starting pay to $16 an hour, and they bolstered some health benefits. The total package, the company claims, represented an investment of $170 million over the next 3 years. Now, the union, in rejecting this offer, noted that the minimum wage of $16 per hour is just 13 cents more than the minimum wage in Denver, where 14 of the 87 stores at issue are located. Also, over the last decade, while Kroger's profits are up 102% and the pay of the CEO went up to 150%, the inflation-adjusted pay of Kroger workers in Colorado and other regions went down. Didn't go up, went down. So, Sconsi, you have mentioned the Zeke Elliott Feed Me of the Week here. You press the button. So please, tag in here and tell us your thoughts on this story.
Well, I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier too. It's just kind of the same thing. We've got tons of companies are making record profits during a time when they're jacking up the prices on things, and they're blaming it on supply chain and limited resources, et cetera, yet somehow they're still making a shit ton of money. So something there doesn't quite add up to me. I don't like the one stat that they've got here, that they declined this. They rejected the offer because 14 of the 87 stores wouldn't see a huge raise. And I mean, I don't know what that percentage is, but it's not a very large percentage. So it seems like there's a whole lot of other people who are kind of losing out. Now, that's not to say that, the other 73 stores don't have a minimum wage of $15, and so they'd only see $1 raise. I don't know. I don't know what those numbers are, but that stat just didn't seem to, really, really latch onto me. But again, this is kind of the same old thing. We keep seeing this over and over again. Corporations are incredibly greedy. They want more and more money, even though they're making tons more money. Instead of rewarding their employees with better pay, better benefits, whatever the case may be, they're instead just sticking it in their coffers or giving it to their shareholders. And I, for one, am very excited to see that there's companies that are, or employees who are standing up to this, whether it's unions that are fighting. Starbucks just had their first Starbucks that unionized over, I think it was on the East Coast somewhere, a couple weeks back. And these are workers who are trying to take their future in their own hands. And I think that's a very, very important thing. This ties into the Great Resignation we've talked about a couple different times. So I think we're starting to see people who are understanding what their worth is, and they're starting to fight back. And I think that's a cool thing.
Yeah, I mean, and it sounds like the strike is still going on, and there's lots of, they're like, no progress is being made. So I'm hopeful that something good comes out of this, and it's not just another one of those like lukewarm, well, we kind of got something instead of nothing situations.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. And Gamer, I think your point there that, despite rising wages with inflation, it basically eliminates it. It's true with the rate that inflation's going up right now. If you don't get a very significant raise, right, you're getting a pay cut, right? It's just kind of almost a slap in the face at one point. So
yeah, and that's probably a topic that is far beyond our capability, but it would be really interesting to be able to dive more into inflation and like, what is this and why is it happening and what are the metrics behind it? Because that is such a frustrating part of life right now. Like looking at the prices for heating your house, like it's like, holy cripes, man! Like.
Yeah. Well, according to our chat here, we just need to get Gamer on the podcast because he could talk about all this shit. So for those who aren't in the chat live, who might listen or watch us later, well, watching, you could probably still see this. But Gamer said record profits tied with inflation actually makes a lot of economic sense. People have more money to spend, so they buy more stuff, so companies do well, but it results in shortages driving up prices. I can kind of see that to some degree, but I don't know that people necessarily have more money because wages in a lot of ways are flat, or they're not driving up past inflation. So I don't know, that I have questions on that. But he also said, I've seen some data that says the key problem with inflation is due to the fact that tourism is way down. People are spending that money on goods, causing shortages of physical goods due to COVID. I could kind of see that to some degree.
Okay, interesting.
So, all right, I'm spinning the wheel. It's the Gamer Show tonight, everybody.
You know what I spent that money on? Beer.
Beer. Speaking of something that has absolutely nothing to beer, let's talk about the wee random dick of the week.
Uh-oh, who are we talking about?
We're going to Michigan, and we're going to talk about lawn care.
Oh, we're not talking about... the other guy I thought was going to be the dick of the week.
No, this is so much worse.
All right. So, a Michigan judge berated a 72-year-old man who told the judge he'd failed to maintain his yard because his cancer treatments made him weak. In a video of the exchange, Burhan Chowdhury of I don't even know how to pronounce that. Anyway, there's a town near Detroit, and this man explained his situation to the district judge, Alexis Crott. and she said to him, "You should be ashamed of yourself. If I could give you jail time on this, I would." She then issued him a $100 fine, adding, "You've got to get your stuff cleaned up. It's totally inappropriate." Now, the man's son, who joined the father on Zoom for the court hearing, said that the father was sick and that the property has already been cleaned up. So, to TLDR the story for everybody, this man was sick, and he said that he let his lawn care in his alley go because he was sick and he couldn't do it. So apparently that meant that he got sent to court. And this lady said that she wanted to put him in jail because he couldn't clean up his lawn. Now, to me, this seems like a horrendous misuse of resources, because where I live in the town redacted, they will look at your information, they will send you a letter, and they're going to say, "Hey, see that you got some weeds. We need you to clean that up. You got 30 days. You don't clean that up in 30 days, we're going to clean it up for you. And then we're going to send you a bill. And then you're going to pay us that bill." That's how this is going to work. Instead, apparently they send this man to court, and they tell him that they should send him to jail. This is the inefficient stuff that's happening in our country right now. What you got on this, Skanzi?
The wee random dick of the week. I mean, I can play this one too.
They fucking suck.
I mean, I got plenty of these. It's so
What
it's
about the
worth
guy who's like the saddest thing on the internet before.
this one right here.
That was one of the stupidest things that I've ever seen anybody post on the internet before.
I can play the second one too.
People like you make me sad.
All right. Busting out all the sounds tonight. So it's worth also calling out, and I was in my own head, so I don't know that you mentioned this, maybe you did, but so basically this man, he's going through cancer treatment, right? So he can't really do that himself, and his son has been helping him keep his lawn in order. His son was out of the country for 3 fucking months, so his lawn overgrew, and when he came back, Dad's like, "Hey, I got a ticket," and the judge is yelling at me and calling me a pain in the ass. And Emily went right where I am. Like, all this money that they spent bringing these people in on trial and having the judge there, etc., it's a waste of goddamn money. And what the fuck ever happened to empathy, right? Like, why can't somebody just reach out and say, "Look, what's going on?" Like, you can't tell me this guy's neighbors didn't know that he's an old man who's having issues. Like, somebody can't just step up and help the dude out. I mean, it's irritating and drives me freaking mad that we live in a country where people can't help one another out, and it's always, we just need to attack. Like, this is stupid. And then the fact that this judge decided to run her goddamn mouth like she's a fucking schoolyard bully or something. Like, give me a fucking break. I mean, if anything positive, his son said that he paid the fine, which he already did, and he said he'd received a lot of support from other people online and in their community. So hopefully, this will raise a little bit of awareness, and maybe this will, bring some small little bit of good, right? Maybe some people in the community will kind of band together and maybe help out, and maybe something good will come with this. That's all that I can really hope for.
Yeah, this is just, it was ridiculous when I read it. I'm like, dude, like, there are so many more efficient ways to handle this.
Yeah, no, it's just absolutely stupid. Like, it's just stupid as fuck. Yeah. All right, B, we're at 43 minutes. Do we want to spin one? Let's not spin. Do you have one that you want to throw your challenge flag at?
Not in particular.
No?
I mean, there's a couple, like, if one doesn't come up, I might touch on it in my extra point. If the other ones are all just kind of like meh to me. So
all right, well, we're gonna skip it, and we are going to then move on to Gamer's favorite segment,
Random Rankings.
Now Gamer can tell us how we're wrong about football.
Yeah. So Old Man Wiggum asks that we recap our preseason predictions where we predicted the Packers record. So, what we learned in this exercise is we should really keep our day jobs because if we put money on this, it didn't go well. But
By the way, I disagree with that take, for the record. I vehemently disagree.
Okay, tell me why you disagree.
We both said the Packers would finish 12-5. They were 13-4. We were one game off.
I suppose. Like, we technically we got 7 games wrong, which I guess I feel like in the end that would just like even out our money to like nothing, probably.
Yeah, I guess I don't put a lot of weight on that just because you never know what the hell's going to happen, right? Like the season is so completely random. So I don't know that I put a ton of weight. Like we both had them beating New Orleans. New Orleans turned out to be kind of garbage-ish, and clearly that was an anomaly, right? So I'm not going to like throw us under the bus because we picked that game wrong. You know what I mean?
And we both had them losing to San Francisco, which is kind of an interesting
that is
foreshadowing for later, right? But so we both picked 12-5. They ended up going 13-4. Wiggum actually chose 13-4.
Wiggum did have 13-4. Yeah.
When it comes to the tiebreaker, neither of us were terribly like close, really. Like, I mean, you were close on yards. You went over by a little bit. I was closer on touchdowns. You were closer on interceptions. So
Wiggum wasn't closer on anything.
No.
So Wiggs won the record for the season. And we kind of mixed on the Rodgers thing. I don't know. I'd give myself the edge, but I'm biased. So yeah, overall, I think we did pretty decent though. Like the numbers we had here, Wiggs yardage was way high, but otherwise we were, I guess touchdowns a little high, but we were in the same. We were all right around in the same vicinity.
Yeah. So. We had that. Now, we also did the wild card weekend. So, on the wild card weekend, we had some scoins left over from the Sconsiverse. And we can recap how that went for each of us. I will start with myself. So, I started with 100 scoins, and in the end, I ended with 100 scoins.
100
So, I guess I made back my scoins, right? Because I lost my over bet on Raiders Bengals. I lost my spread bet on the Patriots. I won my Bucks bet at -8.5, but lost on the over. Thank you, Jalen Hurts. I won both of my bets on the 49ers because Dak Prescott doesn't know how to slide and can't hand the ball to an official. I lost on the Steelers because Ben Roethlisberger has officially turned into a pumpkin, but we got the over. And then the Rams brought it home for 100. But Sconzi is the true star of this show.
I did have a good week. Yeah.
Only got one of his picks wrong. He spent $20 on the over.
Scoins. 20 scoins,
Bengals.
not dollars. Scoins.
Scoins. Yep. 20 scoins. I mean, he might have spent dollars. We just don't know about it.
That's fair.
But so, in the end, he's ended up with 160 scoins. Now, what we're going to do, because we are scoin gambling degenerates, is we are going to spend the balance of scoins that we have on each of these divisional round games. And then if we still have scoins left over, we'll do the same for the next round. And then if we're out of scoins, then we'll just be sad. So,
yeah, Wiggs did say he was putting everything on the under, I think it was, for the Rams and the Cardinals. I don't know if it was the over or the under hit on that, to be honest with you.
Well, let's see. We should be able to figure that out, but that's not in this sheet. We'd have to go look at the other sheet.
I have that pulled up, actually, right here. 64, yeah. So this was... Oh, it's not in here. Oh, there, it's down here.
Yeah, it's down there.
Rams, Cardinals, the over-under was 49.5. I think they were over that, weren't they?
It wouldn't have hit because it wasn't like 34-11 or something.
Something like that.
I don't know what the final score was. This is us doing prep live on air.
Yeah, so I guess if
almost qualified.
If that's what you had, Wiggs, you win. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's 34-11. So
all right, B. So what do you got? Walk us through what you got this week and why you've got this.
All right. Do we want to go game by game, or do we want to do me and then do yours?
Yeah, just do you and then I'll do mine.
All right, so for Bengals Titans, the Titans are 3.5-point favorites with an over/under of 47. So I am going to start by putting 20 scoins on the Titans to cover the 3.5. I may not want the points, but I'm good. Well, I might not. I'm laying points, but the Titans, in theory, are supposed to be getting back Derrick Henry, who is their top running back, and the Titans have looked pretty good over these last few weeks. I'm kind of fading the Bengals. I tried to fade them last week, but that didn't really work out for me too well, even though I think I picked them. No, I didn't pick that game because I was still fading the Bengals. So I'm totally fading the Bengals here. I think the Titans cover. I did put the over because I think that this might be a little bit more of a higher scoring game. We'll see how that goes for me. I didn't do too well on my over-under picks the last couple of times here. But who knows? Now, I'm going to skip 49ers and Packers because that's what everybody wants to talk about. And I am going to go to Rams and Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are 3-point underdog or favorites with an over-under of 48.5. In this game, I am putting the under on this matchup. I think there are two good defenses here, so I don't know that you're going to hit this 48.5, but after watching the Rams take Kyler Murray and turn him into Carson Wentz last night, I'm thinking that I might have to take the Rams in my points. So I'm going to go with 10 scoins on those Rams. Then for Bills and Chiefs, the Chiefs are 2.5-point favorites with an over-under of 54.5. Not 55, but just 54.5. So I am going to take the over because I want points. Points. So Tony Romo is going to have fun with all the points that are scored in this game by the Chiefs, who I'm putting 10 scoins on. So I got 10 scoins on the Chiefs, 10 scoins on the over. Now, I'm going to get to everyone's favorite game. The Green Bay Packers, who, when I put this run sheet together, they were 4.5-point favorites. That is now -6. So no matter which spread I choose, I have decided that I'm taking the over because the Packers defense hasn't stopped anyone in 8 weeks. And I'm going to put 20 scoins on the Packers, which was a very late change because initially when I had filled this in at Packers at 4.5, I had picked 49ers. But what I'm hearing now is that old friend Jimmy Garoppolo not only has a torn tendon in his thumb, but he also has a shoulder strain or sprain. And do you know who else had a shoulder strain or sprain once, Gonzi?
Who's that?
Friend of the show, Jared Goff. And that didn't really work out well for him. So I don't think it's going to work out well for Jimmy G either. So we're going to hope that the Packers can get their stuff together and that they can move on to the NFC Championship game.
All right. Well, my picks are very different. Well, maybe not very different. They're different because I'm all in on a lot of underdogs this week. It's funny because there's quite a few teams here that I've been big on pretty much the whole year, and they've had ups and downs. But I'm in on the Bengals, the Packers, the Rams, and the Buffalo Bills. And frankly, I would take all three of them straight up. And then the Packers, I would take them straight up as well. I'm good on all of those. I put a big time scoins on the Packers. I also went with the over. I mean, I had 160 scoins. I mean, some of us were really good last week, and we had to find a way to spend all our scoins. And of those 4 games, that's the one that I feel most confident in, which is kind of scary. But we don't have Mike McCarthy, so that's working in our favor. I did take the under on the Bengals Titans just because I don't know. I don't see the Titans scoring a ton of points, but you know what? I fucking like Joe Burrow. So I'm going with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase to light that thing up, take home that win. With the Rams and Buccaneers, I initially wrote down the Bucs, but that Rams defense is insane. And I've always been pretty big on Stafford. I know I get a lot of shit about it, but he makes some stupid mistakes, but he just needs to not make stupid mistakes. And that defense can really carry them. That defense is insane. So I'm going with the Rams. And I just think Buffalo is next level at this point. The Chiefs-Bills game could be like 100 to 102. It could be insane. But I'm in on Josh Allen and the Bills. So most of my scorings went with the actual pick versus the over under because I suck at the over under. So there we go. That's what we got. So old man Wiggum is putting all scorings on the Packers, and he's also giving up 10.5 points.
He's giving up 10.5 points.
That's what he said. All his scorings on the Packers at 10.5. So all right.
I feel like we're just gonna get text messages from old man Wiggum this weekend. That's like 10 scorings on this drive that says that this person scored a touchdown.
Gamer said the Niners didn't even need to throw to beat Green Bay in 2020. That's true. That's true. I agree. I just think that in the end, I kind of take the same approach that I take with March Madness because I know nothing about college basketball. I just look at who's the one player that you don't want to play against, and in this playoffs, I think that's Aaron Rodgers. So I'm going to give the edge to Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, this is what folks on. I've heard the term styles make fights a lot, right? So that's the term that I'm going to use. But this is one of those styles make fights games because the 49ers are one of those teams that are going to throw rocks at you like the whole game. They're just going to throw random stuff at you all the time, and they're just going to be weird and claw at you and just try to fight you. And then the biggest difference that I see here is that if we look at both of these teams, the Packers can do both. They can play from ahead with Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, and they can play from behind because Rodgers is used to being a passing dominant quarterback anyway. If the 49ers are able to play from ahead, the Packers are in trouble.
Yeah.
If the 49ers are forced to play from a 10-point deficit, they don't want that because they don't really play a super up-tempo style of football. They're more grind it out, run stuff with Debo and Brandon Ayuk and stuff like that. And you don't want Jimmy Garoppolo out here with his thumb, hanging by one ligament trying to throw when it's 10 degrees. And their other guy is a rookie who runs a lot, but we've seen how that's worked out for, all of our fun friends, Jalen Hurts and Kyler Murray and all of those guys so far, right? Do we want to see more teardrop throws over the defensive line?
The worst throws I ever saw. All right, well, just to put an exclamation point on this, I'm going the 60 scoins on the Packers because Gamer has been telling me every week for the entire season the Packers defense is great. So if I lose my 60 scoins, it's Gamer's fault. And with that, B, what's your extra point?
Funny part about this is Sconzi put out a timeout this past week about MLK and about some other things that were on his mind. And he asked me, do you have any curated MLK content for our podcast? And I said no. And then he put an article about MLK on the run sheet that we didn't get to today. So I'm going to talk about it now. So one of the things that we're thinking about as we've passed another Martin Luther King Jr. holiday is how people portray the words of other people and how things are going in our society today. When I listened to Sconzi's timeout, I started to feel very frustrated and upset and disappointed in how things are going in our country. And then I read this article that Sconzi put on the run sheet, and it was talking about all of the different ways that MLK advocated for things. And he went out there and he said his piece, and he tried to be an advocate for change and a person in the community that advanced forward not just things for him, but for other people. And as frustrated as I am with how things are going today in our society and where we're at and what's going on, it really hits home with me that I, as Sconzi said in the timeout, need to be someone who is out there saying my piece. I need to be that advocate. I need to do those things. I need to be part of the solution, because if I say nothing, then I'm part of the problem. So that's one of the things that we do here on this podcast every week. But I'm hopeful that as time moves forward, I can continue to find ways in my house, on my block, in my city, in my state, and in the world to make a difference, because I feel like that's where everything starts. And I kind of take that from Emmanuel Acho, because he's talked a lot about how in order to impact change and to affect change, it has to start on that local level. Because if you start in your house, then you can start in your block and on your community and in your city, and it grows from there. Because the more people that you have on the pathway of change with you, that's how things happen. So trying to take that in a positive way and not the way of that dude being like, you have bad followers. But, to each of us, do what you can to make the change that you want to see and that you want to be.
I agree. Thank you. A couple things to cover really quick. So one thing that your comment brought to mind is the link that I just added in the chat here. It's a group in Chicago called My Block, My Hood, My City. This is something that comes up a lot in a group that I'm part of at work, where we volunteer or we donate or whatever the case may be. And this is, it really kind of is very similar to what you mentioned, B, which is start local, start with my people, with the people that I'm around, and how we make a difference. Second thing, B mentioned the timeout Wisconsin that I did today or this week. Just as a heads up for those who aren't aware, what that is extra podcast, or we'll say extra podcast content that just goes to some of our patrons. So, if you want to get in on some of that, Patreon is where you can do that. And hopefully Wiggs is around. He can share that link, because I always get it wrong. Anyway, so the funny thing is, maybe it's not that funny, and maybe it's not super surprising either, but I was going to touch base on some MLK stuff, and I appreciate Wiggs putting that quote in the chat, because that's the one that I was going to steal. In fact, when you put it in there earlier, I copied it and put it on Notepad. And that quote, for those who are listening after the fact, very famous quote: darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. And I think that this is a very important quote. I think it's something that all of us should take to heart. I think it's something that I look at from a larger scale, in much of the same way that you were talking, B, about, how do you support, how do you empathize, how do you help those that are immediately around you? But I also look at it very personally. And, I shared a lot of things on the timeout this week around some of my personal goals and what I'm looking to achieve this year. We're not going to call them resolutions, because those are stupid. Nobody keeps those, but they're goals that I have for self-improvement and self-care that I want to make sure I'm doing this year. And I think one of those things is to really make sure I'm diving into empathy and love more. Like, I think that a lot of people, I know B specifically, gets a kick out of me getting all riled up and yelling and swearing on this podcast. B likes to say that we'll lose all our followers if I stop doing that. Although I didn't really do it too much on this one, I'm just saying. But I also think it's important, while standing up for what you believe in and what you truly believe is right is super important. I also know that I could do that maybe in a little bit of a different way. And I think that I need to share more love. And that's what I want to do a lot more this year. So whether that, I don't know exactly what form that's going to take. I'm sure it's going to happen here on the podcast. It's going to happen on the streams that I have, hopefully. Like, those are things that I'm working on. And I guess that I just want to verbalize that, so y'all can hold me accountable to that. I'll hate it when you do, but you can hold me accountable to that. And hopefully it resonates with some of you too. And maybe there's other people there. I think that the more that we can all share love versus hate, the better the world is. And there's a shit ton of hate out there. There's a shit ton of hate out there. We can't stop it by hating the hate, right? We have to share love. And I think that's a very important thing. So that's what I got. I would hand it off to B, but it says nobody else is in the chat. So we're going to come back here and, wait, he's maybe back. He's got no video, but it's flashing. I'm not sure what's happening there. So I am going to go ahead, B, if you can hear me, maybe disconnect from Discord and jump back in. But I'm going to go ahead and kind of wrap us up while we see if B makes it back, which it looks like he's almost coming. You can see the little, there he is. All right, B, you want to wrap us up? We got no volume, though.
There we go. I had muted myself. I had a legit internet outage. It wasn't my internet dying. It was actually like legit. Oh, internet's actually offline for a minute. Anyway, I missed your quote, but if you would like to tell me what Sconzi's quote was, you can find me on Twitter at LandmarkMKE. If you want to talk to Sconzi about his quote, you can find him at Sconzi. If you'd like to find Sconzi in real life, you can find him on Amazon Sidewalk. If you'd like to find the podcast, you can find that on YouTube on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock. You can also find Sconzi on YouTube Wednesday and Thursday nights. You can find the podcast in your favorite podcast app at We Random. You can find it here on YouTube. And if you'd like to find us, there's the internet. You can use it just like we did to look up information about anything on this podcast. So before we let you go tonight, we want to wish you happy something. I don't know. My brain is just like, I don't know what's going on. Like, my brain is just like literally rebooting just like my computer. So I'm going to be done now, but thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. And hopefully by next week, my brain will have rebooted. And if it doesn't, a lot bummer. Nope, I can't do that because that'll get you DMCA. Ah! I'll tell you the thing after we're done. But anyway, Have a good night, everybody. We'll talk to y'all later.
Bye, everybody.